Internet connection is unstable. He's going to be joining any second, despite the challenges that we're dealing with technology. There he is. I see his picture. Hey, Mr. Snorton, how are you today? Can you hear me? We're having technical difficulties too, so don't worry. We'll wait till you log in. I mean, you connect with the audio. There we are.
Yeah. How you doing?
It's been a challenge, brother. It's been a challenge today.
It happens.
It happens with technology. And plus, we have some high winds here in Michigan, so the wind is just, I don't know if it's impacting our internet connection, but glad to have you on the show, and welcome to the second annual Fall Family Book Fair 2020.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, and to all the, to the fellow authors, keep doing the great work you're doing. To everyone else that's tuned in, thank you for taking time not only to listen to me, but to support, some great authors, a great venue. So I'm really happy to be a part of today.
Awesome. Well, you have such a great, detailed, intriguing background, right? Tell us who Andrew Snorton is, and then we'll get into your books, because you have 3 of them, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I do. I have 3. Well, again, my name is Andrew Snorton. I'm based out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. Grew up in the state of New Jersey. Attended college at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Professionally, under my business, Creative Community Solutions, I have an education-based branch. So even earlier today, I was doing virtual ACT and SAT prep. I work with students elementary, middle, and high school, so I'm really excited and thankful for that. On the press and media end, I do have my own television show with one of the Atlanta media groups, Status Network. So I air every second and fourth Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's available on Roku and Amazon Fire Stick, as well as all the other platforms. But I've had fellow authors on before, and people across the board, entertainment, business, and community. And then on the writing end, I actually have worked with a couple of authors with editing their work. And really since 2017 is when I stepped really knee deep into the writing end with, like you said, 3 books, a few audiobooks, and it's a blessing. Seriously, it's a journey and it's a blessing. It really is.
Awesome. So you are the author of 9 Stories of Faith. You're also the author of Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with Joseph Snorton. And then your 3rd book is Nothing Minor. That's the newest release. And that's the 2019 coverage of minor league baseball. And it includes the Negro Southern League Museum, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And
yes,
then you have the audiobook series, the Author's Mixtape. You're doing
yes. Yes, those are the works. I'll get started, if I may, with the first book that you mentioned, 9 Stories of Faith. So hopefully you can see it based on the lighting, 9 Stories of Faith. And the background on this one is that all of us know everyone has something that they're going through, but there are some people who are going through something each and every day. So what I was able to do with the 9 people that I interviewed, in no particular order, it's a talk across the faith community. Most people are of Christian background, but I did have one interviewee who is of Islamic background and one of Hinduism. And I was very intentional with that because sometimes those conversations across the faith community don't always go that great, just to be honest with you. But in my intro, when I mentioned the traditional Islamic greeting, wa assalamu alaikum, alaikum assalam, which is peace unto you and peace back, that's acknowledgement of people's humanity. And you think about other things that are done in the church, like when you have fellowship and passing the peace. In principle, you're doing the same thing. So part of doing this was to see where there are areas of overlap within our faith communities. And when you build upon those, there's some great things that can happen. That can be improved community advocacy. Or, during this time, some people might have heard there's an election going on. You might have heard that. But now all of a sudden, other forms of advocacy and coalition building. But again, another key thing is everyone is dealing with something, but some people are living with something each and every day. So when you're able to listen to these people's retellings of their personal stories, living with physical health conditions like multiple sclerosis, mental health with a bipolar disorder, life after incarceration, but through the lens of their respective faith, best practices with health and wellness, how they incorporate their support networks from family, friends, and loved ones. But a big thing is how they've changed what's between their left and their right ears. So now when you're reading and getting these, it doesn't mean you have to do exactly as someone else does, but it gives you pathways of how you can, quote, live with something versus having it. And I think that's key. When you live with something, you keep it in perspective. When you have something, that can take dominion over you. And I think when people get a chance to draw motivation, encouragement from these stories, you're doing some tremendous seed planting. So again, those are the premises behind 9 Stories of Faith.
Back it up a little bit more. Back it up some. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1.
Awesome.
The second book that you mentioned, Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with AuthorASnorton. So here's the cover. And part of the motivation behind this is we know that poetry, just like when you listen to music, a song lyric can be very powerful. Yes. Poetry may be, quote, the simplest form of writing, but in a lot of respects, it can be the most powerful form of writing. So the backstory behind the title is that back in, I want to say it was 2014, when the poet laureate, Dr. Maya Angelou, passed. She was actually a professor where I went to college at Wake Forest.
Oh, wonderful.
And I was blessed to be able to go to the actual, the memorial service that was done on their campus. That was the service that featured First Lady Michelle Obama, former President Bill Clinton, Oprah Winfrey, obviously, Cicely Tyson. So I was able to be there. But when I got my invite, it was the name of Joseph instead of Andrew. So me being the silly kid that I am, I asked my mom and dad if there's something they wanted to tell me that they hadn't told me before. But in doing a little bit of digging, you know how you come up and discover like distant kin, and this was the story. So in the book, it's really two parts. One part is me asking him questions, looking at the action of love through broader lenses. So you think of the lens of love through your family relationships, community relationships, you know, those people who adopt you as kin, people in your life, people no longer in your life, self-reflection. The first half is really me asking him questions. The second half is him asking me questions. And what I did a little bit differently is that the beginning of each chapter is a portion of the conversation. That way the reader knows the context. So when they get into the poem, they can do a better job of drawing connections. I think sometimes as writers, we're always guilty of putting this masterpiece out, but we have to remember we've got to talk with our audience. So in doing that a little bit differently, it's a way to draw connections. And another thing, sometimes people feel that, you know, when you hear love, some people automatically think relationships. And for some people who might not be in the best space and place, or something isn't happening, especially with the holidays around the corner, that can be a negative spike. So before someone does something foolish, just pause and take inventory. That person that gives you that periodic text, hey, let's get a cup of coffee, or let's go for a walk in the park, or let's watch the game. They're thinking enough of you. So if anything, when you pause and take inventory and you realize there are people that are thinking of you, there are people that think about you and care. So this is just that talk going through that whole dynamic, touching base on people who've kind of fallen by the wayside, times when you've had questions and doubt, but also the hope that can come. And again, just taking inventory. So that's Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep. The third book that you mentioned, Nothing Minor. Some people would wonder, what does a book about minor league baseball have to do with motivation, encouragement, and all that? Well, in covering minor league ball in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi, there are some very powerful interviews and powerful stories. Some people might not realize some of these guys who are playing at the minor league level are coming straight out of high school. And some of the insight that they gave about the game is applicable beyond it. One of my favorite interviews was with a young man by the name of Travis Demerit, who at the time was playing with the AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves, so just a level below the major leagues. And he said something that was very powerful that can be used beyond baseball. He said, sometimes you have to filter out the noise. The noise can be people who are trying to kill your dreams. The noise can also come from you talking yourself out of stuff. And in Travis's case, Travis actually got traded last season to the Detroit Tigers system. The Detroit Tigers purchased his minor league contract. So for the end of the 2019 season, he was the starting right fielder for the Detroit Tigers right there in your own, in your neighborhood, basically. And even though the minor leagues didn't play this year, Travis was actually back and forth between the big league Detroit Tigers as well as their practice squad or their taxi squad. And overall, there's about 4 or 5 players I interviewed that were either on major league rosters or back and forth on the taxi squad. And I was very deliberate with a lot of my pregame interviews, interviewing players of African-American background. That's a story and a narrative that, especially when you look at how the demographics of the game have changed, especially like in the 80s and 90s, it's a story that is overlooked. So when you're hearing from a Travis who is in his mid-20s, when you're hearing from a Taekwon Forbes who plays with the Birmingham Barons, which is a Double-A affiliate of the Chicago White Sox, when you can interview a player like a Trey Harris who's with the Double-A affiliate of the Atlanta Braves, not only are they talking about the gameplay, but those nuggets go beyond that and can be seed planting on so many levels. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention contributions from Emery Rose Photography, Black female-owned photographer based here in Metro Atlanta. So that's another story behind the story. But another piece that I think is real important is what you said earlier, the Negro Southern Leagues Museum. It's based in Birmingham, Alabama. It is actually the home of one of the largest archives. It goes back and forth between the museum in Kansas City and the one in Birmingham. It's actually on the same block as the ballpark in Birmingham. And this year is actually the centennial celebration of the Negro Leagues. So when people think about their introduction to Negro Leagues, obviously we think about Jackie Robinson and the movie 42 and the great work by the late Chadwick Boseman. But people forget about names like a Larry Doby, who is the second African-American player to break through, and also the second African-American player to become a major league manager. So when you look at all of these stories and when you think about it, part of the reason for like return black folks gravitated towards baseball, that was the biggest sport. There were you think about it, outside of boxing and maybe, like Jesse Owens with the Olympics, professional sports wise, other sports that we watched like football and basketball, those sports didn't have their breakthroughs until the 50s and 60s. Right. So when you think about the game of baseball and the relevance, that was really the gateway for other sports and other people putting that pressure on other sports to be like, hey, you need to open up the doors. And even fast forward to today's times, especially with the World Series just ending, a lot of people might have got acquainted with the name Mookie Betts, who's the starting outfielder for the Dodgers. A lot of people don't realize when he was with the Boston Red Sox system, he played minor league ball at one of the teams I covered, the Greenville Drive. And people might forget when he was with Boston, not only did he win the Most Valuable Player award, but he also won a World Series. And so it's really part covering the game, the stories of these, great people who are doing great things within the minor league system and working their way up into the big leagues. It's also acknowledging the impact of the Negro Southern Leagues Museum, which is, again, based in Birmingham, Alabama, but the bigger impact of the Negro Leagues. And I also did a portion with one of the umpire supervisors, African-American background, who does a lot of the training of the umpires. So even when you think about pathways to sports, you don't always have to do it on the field. You can be the manager. You can be the general manager. You could be an umpire. You can do, ownership, or even in regards to just like journalism in general. Like there is a need for African Americans, there's a need for women, there's a need for other demographics to be in these spaces and places so we can better encompass these stories that a lot of people overlook.
Gotcha. Wow. I guess we better keep rolling with your now you can just tell us about, since you're so good at this. Tell us about the audio book series now.
Sure. The audiobook series called the Author's Mixtape. It's actually available on almost like 300 different platforms. So if people are used to downloading things from Tidal, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, Deezer, Amazon, you can basically go there. And the series is done in partnership with Third Level Entertainment as well as Canis Major Digital. And just like when you think of a freestyle tape in hip hop where someone has a track and they're kind of improvising as they go along, we basically did our audiobook that way. So basically what happened is with the first one, Organic Musings from H to O, that's volume 1. When we went in studio, we didn't pre-write anything. The owner's daughters had a list of 20 topics. We put them in a bag. We took it out. I had a moment to go ahead and write down something, and a couple of the poetry spoken word pieces have musical arrangements to it. And we went ahead and recorded it in a 2-hour session. So we did 7 tracks within 2 hours. So the first audiobook is really reinterpreting the minds of a middle schooler. And when you think of the topics they came up with, what gives you peace? Healthcare, politics. This wasn't grown folks. These were 7th and 8th graders putting that out there.
Oh, wow.
So for me, yeah. So really the first audiobook, honestly, is really great for middle school, high school, and adult because of that's who came up with the topics. The second audiobook, Beyond History, Beyond the Holidays, you can figure out was released in February, is an 8-track piece. And one of my favorite tracks is called the Nosa Tribe. And what I did is, if people remember the movie Posse, and if they remember the opening scene where Billy Zane's character, who's the general, was making fun of the help, saying he's from the Motisa tribe, and he's like, Motisa, making fun of that. I took that, and what we did with our voices is that we made it to where it sounded like the person didn't know what they were talking about. But if you listen to the questions and answers, it's digging real deep. So when they say don't judge a book by its cover, we basically took that theme and put it on audio. So that's the second one. And then the third one, Get the Bag, which was released in August, is a 9-track piece. But again, all of the writing and all that, I didn't pre-write anything. Everything was done in studio. So that's just, I'll say, a fun, creative series that kind of shed light on a couple of items. And with the third one, we did a follow-up track called the Yeser Tribe, like the Yeser Tribe. And it's funny because all the questions start off with something that would be affirmative. Do you think HBCUs should get funding? Which, yes, heck yes, they should. Are you going to be registered to vote? And then we changed it. So the last question was something where we had to revert back to how we did the Nosa Tribe. So those are the 3 audiobooks that I've been able to do.
Wow. That's impressive. That's amazing that you accomplished all of that. We're running out of time. I don't have any questions. I thought you spoke very well, and you basically gave us really good in-depth information about your books. Anybody have any questions in the audience? We do have people in the audience. There's nothing in the chat. Well, congratulations on all the success.
It's a blessing, and
it is a blessing.
It is. And hopefully, before I know the time's winding down, I'll give my contact info. Just to anyone out there, to any fellow authors, we're needed. Our voices are needed. Our narratives are needed. Don't let anyone tell you different. And like I said, to borrow from what Travis said, filter out the noise. If there's noise that's telling you don't write or don't do something, I'm not trying to tell you where to go, but you might want to move away from that space and place, number one. To everybody out there, not only just support, I mean, yes, of course I want your support, but please don't forget bookstores like this and things like this are critically important. It's great. No knock on Barnes & Noble, no knock on Amazon, but you want to get to the meat and potatoes, the shrimp and grits, you need to keep supporting stores like this because they will give us a chance where those big boys might not give us a chance. So these things are critically important. I'll make sure to leave with my contact information.
Oh, you can share right now because what we're going to do, they can also get your contact information off our Facebook page on our timeline. And also you are enlisted in our 2020 souvenir booklet. So they can get that from our website or the timeline. And if they click to the page and find your ad, if you click on it, and they'll go right to your website. And remember, we're going to circulate that all through November. Okay, so You should get some feedback and hopefully some business from
Hey, look, any opportunity you have to talk with people, it's a blessing
Well,
because
you know, we do it quarterly, so we're not going to stop. The pandemic's not going to stop us from doing this. Now that we're in the house, we really need to do this. We need to find out and get more educated. It looks like we have a question or a comment. Andrew,
okay.
this is from Deborah Folsom.
Mhm.
Andrew, I love your impressive narratives, especially about minor baseball. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Volson. Thank you so much for just popping in and sharing that. Real quick, I'll say, when it comes to sports journalism, all y'all can figure it out. It's not that many. It's not that many black folk, and even with other sport, like for baseball, especially when I was doing the pregame interviews, I was the only one.
Wow.
All right, real talk.
Well, that's
In the
very
press, in the press box, I'm the only person. The
wow.
only time I would see more people would be when I would go on field and do my photography, like with the camera crews, and then post game, the only one. So when I say that there is a need for men and women, it's not, look, it's a need. And you think about, I was able to capture so many stories. I look forward to capturing more, but guess what? You can figure it out. When there's more of us out there, then we can do a better job of casting a wider net and sharing these things that we need to encourage, embrace, etc. And that's not just in sports. So hopefully people are getting that message.
Well, thank you for sharing your information with us and encouraging our listeners to get engaged in those fields. I mean, you know what? You're there. You know, you're seeing it. So we appreciate the insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
being a part of our book fair, our virtual book fair this year.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Again, thank you. Continued well wishes to you and everyone at Detroit Book City. And again, to everybody that's tuned in, thank you for your support, not only of me, but all the authors and, of course, the store, so we can keep these types of positive and needed things going. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Take care. Be blessed and be safe out there.
That's the plan. The same unto each and every one of you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. You do the same.